polished marble floor of the Stamford Superior Court was cold, but the hand Erica Hayes held was warm. Then the other one. Her 2-year-old twins, Liam and Laura, stared with wide, confused eyes at the towering wooden benches. Erica was a ghost in this room, dressed in a $20 blouse from a thrift store, her hair tied back in a way that highlighted the dark circles under her eyes. Across the room, she sat. Irene Vance. Dripping in diamonds, a smug smile playing on her perfect lips. She was the woman who had stolen Erica's husband, her home, and her life. But what no one in that room knew, not Erica, not her cheating husband Richard, and especially not the mistress, was that the judge was about to reveal a truth so devastating it would shatter everything. By the end of this hearing, one woman would walk out with everything, and the other would collapse in ruins. Life, for Erica Hayes, hadn't always been a struggle. 10 years ago, she was Erica Jensen, a bright-eyed postgraduate with a modest inheritance and a brilliant, ambitious boyfriend named Richard Davenport. He had the vision. She had the seed capital. "We're a team, Erica," he'd whispered, his arms around her in their tiny New Haven apartment. "You and me, against the world." She'd believed him. She'd liquidated her family trust, every penny, $2 million, and poured it into his fledgling hedge fund, Davenport Capital. For the first 5 years, it was a dream. Richard was a wizard. That 2 million became 20, then 200, then 1 billion. They moved from New Haven to a sprawling, 10-bedroom Georgian mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut. The house had staff, an infinity pool, and a garage full of cars Erica never drove. Richard, however, had changed with the rising numbers. The passionate team became a cold, demanding corporation. He was the CEO, and she, he reminded her, was just support staff. When the twins Liam and Laura were born, Erica hoped it would bring back the man she'd loved. Instead, it pushed him further away. They were a distraction, a mess. He spent more and more time at the office, at client dinners that stretched until 3 a.m. Then, 6 months ago, Irene Vance had appeared. She was introduced at the annual Davenport Capital Charity Gala. Erica, in a simple navy gown, had felt dowdy and tired. Irene was a supernova in blood-red couture. She was ostensibly a consultant, specializing in emerging markets. She was also 28, with razor-sharp cheekbones and a laugh that seemed to echo with contempt. Richard was instantly besotted. He began to gaslight Erica with chilling precision. "You seem so stressed, Erica. Are you feeling all right?" he'd ask, his eyes cold, while his phone buzzed with texts Erica knew were from Irene. "Why are you so suspicious? Irene is a vital part of the company's future. Your jealousy is unbecoming. The twins have made you frumpy. You've let yourself go. Look at you." Erica, isolated in the massive, empty house, with only the nannies for company, began to believe him. She felt small, invisible. She was the poor wife, long before she was ever actually poor. She was living in a gilded cage, and the door was slowly being locked by the man she had built, and the woman who was now enjoying the spoils, the man who, in a single night, would decide the cage was no longer necessary, and that it was time to let the bird starve. The night the cage broke, it wasn't with a dramatic crash, but with the sterile click of a briefcase latch. It was a Tuesday. Erica had waited up, as she always did. The twins were asleep upstairs, their small chests rising and falling in the soft glow of a whale-shaped nightlight. Richard walked into the grand foyer at 1:15 a.m. He didn't look tired. He looked energized, his cheeks flushed. He was wearing a new tailored Tom Ford suit. He smelled faintly of Chanel No. 5. a scent Erica never wore, but which she had smelled on Irene at the gala. "We need to talk," he said, not looking at her, loosening his silk tie. "Richard, it's so late. I was worried," Erica started. He held up a hand. "Stop, just stop the whole wounded wife routine. It's boring." He walked past her into his vast, mahogany-panelled study and sat behind his desk. He was treating her like an underperforming employee. "I've filed for divorce, Erica." The words hung in the air, sucking the oxygen from the room. Erica grabbed the back of a leather chair to steady herself. What are you—" "Richard, we have children. You can't just—" "I can and I have," he snapped. Us. It's been dead for years. I'm done." "It's her, isn't it? It's Irene." Richard almost smiled. "Irene understands me. She's my equal. You were a fine starter wife, Erica. But you're not built for this level. You're holding me back." The cruelty was so pure, it was breathtaking. "Holding you back," Erica's voice cracked. "My family's money started you. That money you and she are spending." "Ah, the money," he said, leaning forward. "That's the other thing. You're not getting any of it." "That's not how it works, Richard. We're in a community property state. I'm entitled to—" "You're entitled to nothing," he hissed, his voice dropping. "You're an unfit mother. You're unstable, depressed. You think I haven't had you documented? The nannies, the staff, they all report to me. You'll be lucky to get supervised visitation." It was a lie, a monstrous, calculated lie. Erica was a devoted mother. The twins were her entire world. "You won't get away with this," she whispered, terror mixing with rage. "I already have." He slid a piece of paper across the desk. It was an eviction notice. He had already transferred ownership of the Greenwich mansion into a corporate trust, one she had no access to. "You have 48 hours to vacate. My lawyers will be in touch with a settlement offer. I suggest you take it." The next 48 hours were a blur of tears, panic, and packing. The nannies were dismissed. The house staff looked through her. She was a pariah. She packed what she could fit into her old Honda CR-V, clothes for her and the twins, their favorite toys, and a small box of photos from a life that now felt like a fiction. As she drove away, a black Mercedes G-Wagon pulled into the driveway. Irene Vance stepped out, sunglasses on, and surveyed the mansion. She didn't even glance at Erica's departing car. Erica Hayes, the woman who had funded a billion-dollar empire, drove to a 2-bedroom mold-infested apartment in Bridgeport, the only place that would accept her with no credit and no income. The settlement offer arrived the next day. $50,000. A one-time payment. In exchange, she would sign away all rights to Davenport Capital and agree to a stringent custody arrangement that gave Richard full control. She tore it in half. For the next 4 months, she lived in a special kind of hell. She sold her jewelry, even her original wedding band, just to buy formula and diapers. She applied for food stamps and was denied because her legal address was still, technically, the Greenwich Mansion. She was trapped in a legal loophole designed by her own husband. She found a legal aid lawyer, Gideon Cole, a young, rumpled man who seemed perpetually outraged on her behalf, but was hopelessly outmatched. Richard's lawyers from the white shoe firm of Sterling and Croft were sharks. They filed motion after motion, painting Erica as a gold digger who was suffering from postpartum psychosis. They claimed the twins were in imminent danger from her instability. Meanwhile, Irene's Instagram account was a parade of an extravagant life. Private jets to St. Bart's, front-row seats at Paris Fashion Week, a new 12-carat diamond ring, not an engagement ring, she'd captioned it, just a Tuesday present. She was living Erica's life, only better. Erica grew thinner, paler. The poor wife was no longer a state of mind. It was a cold, hard, hungry reality. The final hearing was set. Richard was suing for full custody, and a motion to have her settlement offer declared the final, binding judgment. Erica had nothing left to lose, and that, she was beginning to realize, was a very dangerous kind of freedom. Gideon Cole's office was above a failing pizza parlor in Bridgeport. It smelled of stale garlic and existential dread. The stacks of files on his desk threatened to topple over with every passing truck. "They're burying us, Erica," Gideon said, rubbing his temples. He hadn't slept in days. "I've filed for discovery on his financials. In response, Sterling and Croft sent over this." He gestured to 8 cardboard boxes stacked against the wall. "It's 200,000 pages of corporate filings, derivative swaps, and offshore holding companies in the Cayman Islands, Switzerland, and Panama. It's a joke. It would take a team of 20 forensic accountants a year to untangle this. He's claiming Davenport Capital is leveraged to the hilt, that its net worth is practically zero." "Zero?" Erica scoffed, bouncing a fussy Laura on her knee. "He just bought Irene a new Bentley. He told Forbes last month he was a 3-comma man." "I know, but what he tells Forbes and what he proves in court are 2 different things. He's hidden it all, Erica. Brilliantly. His lawyers are arguing that your initial $2 million investment was a gift, not an investment. They have a cocktail napkin you supposedly signed in 2010. A cocktail napkin." I might have," Erica said, her stomach sinking. "We were at a bar in New Haven celebrating. He wrote, 'To my partner in crime, my future.' I signed it. I thought it was romantic." Gideon let out a long, pained breath. "He's been planning this, Erica. Not for 6 months, for a decade. He's been planning to cut you out from the very beginning." The realization hit her like a physical blow. The entire marriage, the love she thought they shared, the team. It was all a long con. She wasn't his partner. She was his first mark. "So what do we do?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "Gideon, I can't lose my children. I don't care about the money. I just want my babies." "That's what they're counting on," Gideon said, his eyes hardening. "They'll use the twins to make you sign away the money. And once you sign, they'll still argue you're unstable and take the twins. Richard doesn't want to be a father. He just doesn't want you to be a mother. He wants to win. He wants to annihilate you." The pretrial depositions were a form of psychological torture. Marcus Sterling, Richard's lead counsel, was a silver-haired viper with a voice like polished gravel. He questioned Erica for 8 hours. "Mrs. Hayes, isn't it true you left your children unattended for 2 hours on October 14th? "No, I was in the apartment. I was taking a shower. They were in their cribs, asleep. A 2-hour shower. Would you say that's normal behavior, or would you say it's indicative of a depressive episode? Isn't it true you were seen screaming at your children in public at the Stop and Shop on Main Street? No, Laura was choking on a grape. I was screaming for help. I was terrified. So you were screaming. Thank you." He twisted every act of motherhood, every moment of fear and exhaustion, into a weapon against her. He painted a portrait of a woman unhinged, a woman incapable of caring for her children, a volatile gold digger furious that the money tap had been turned off. The court appointed a child psychologist. Richard naturally had one on retainer, a sleek, expensive doctor from Manhattan who, after one 30-minute assessment with the twins in Richard's presence, wrote a glowing report about his deep paternal bond and expressed grave concerns about Erica's erratic emotional state. The final settlement offer came a week before the hearing. It was worse than the first. $0. She would cede full, sole, and permanent custody of Liam and Laura to Richard. In exchange, he would graciously not sue her for the emotional damages she had caused him. "He's trying to make you homeless," Gideon seethed. "He wants to break you so you don't even show up to court." "I'll show up," Erica said, a cold, hard resolve settling over her. She was no longer sad. She was no longer weak. She was a mother, backed into a corner with nothing left to protect but her young. "He wants to show the court I'm an unfit mother. Fine. Let's go to court." The morning of the hearing, the electricity in Erica's apartment was shut off. The final notice. Red envelope had been sitting on her counter for a week, but she'd had no money to pay it. The digital clock on the microwave AI blinking 12 was the final insult. She dressed herself and the twins in the semi-darkness. Her one good outfit was a navy blue skirt and a white blouse she'd bought from a consignment shop. It was clean, but it was worn. She pulled her hair back into a severe, simple ponytail. There was no time or energy for makeup. Liam and Laura were fussy. They were toddlers. They didn't understand the solemnity of the day. They just knew their mother was tense, the apartment was cold, and they wanted breakfast. She gave them the last of the dry cereal. "Gideon," she'd said on the phone the night before, "I'm bringing them." Erica, no, God, no. The judge will hate it. It's seen as manipulative, as emotional blackmail. Sterling will tear you apart for it. It's the one thing you can't do. He's going to say I'm an unstable mother who uses her children as props. Anyway, Erica had argued, her voice flat. He said it in every motion. At least this way, the judge can see them. She can see they're healthy. She can see they love me. She can see exactly what he's trying to take. "I'm doing it, Gideon." Now, walking up the grand stone steps of the Stamford Superior Court, she felt a wave of nausea. People stared. A mother, her face a mask of anxious exhaustion, clutching the hands of two beautiful, confused toddlers. She passed through security, a humiliating ordeal that involved unfolding their rickety umbrella stroller, tasting their juice box for the guard, and explaining that the plastic toy A lion in her bag was not, in fact, a weapon. When she entered courtroom 4A, the whispers were immediate. Richard was already there, sitting at the respondent's table. He looked magnificent in a dark charcoal suit, his posture perfect. Next to him, Marcus Sterling, his lawyer, was arranging files, and in the front row of the gallery, just behind Richard, sat Irene Vance. She was a vision in a cream-colored Chanel suit. A large, flawless canary diamond, a new one, was on her left hand. When she saw Erica and the twins, her lips curled into a smile of pure, venomous pity. She leaned over and whispered something to the man next to her, another of Richard's lawyers, and they both chuckled. Erica's blood ran cold. She felt the shame rise in her, hot and acidic. This was the trap. Richard wanted her to look like this. Poor, desperate, and pathetic. He wanted to parade his victory in front of her. "Erica, over here," Gideon hissed, waving her to the petitioner's table. He looked ill when he saw Liam and Laura. "You really did it." "They're my children," Erica said, her voice shaking but firm. She sat down, pulling Liam into her lap while Laura squirmed in the chair beside her. Richard turned, his eyes locking on Erica. His face, for a split second, registered pure, unfiltered fury. He had not expected this. He had expected her to crawl in, broken and alone. He had not expected her to bring the evidence. He stood up, his massive frame radiating menace, and started to walk toward her. "What do you think you're doing?" he seethed, his voice low. "All rise," a bailiff shouted, cutting him off. "The Honourable Judge Marion Albright, presiding. Richard shot her one last look, a promise of retribution, and returned to his seat. Erica stood, holding Liam's hand. Judge Marion Albright swept into the room. She was an older woman, perhaps in her late 60s, with steel grey hair pulled into a tight bun and spectacles perched on her nose. She was known as the Hammer. She took no nonsense, was famous for her withering cross-examinations, and was utterly immune to the wealth that so often intimidated other judges in this district. She sat, looked at the file, and then looked up, her gaze sweeping the room. Her eyes landed on Erica, then on the twins. Her expression was completely, terrifyingly blank. She did not acknowledge them. "Mr. Cole," the judge said, her voice crisp, "are your clients prepared to begin?" "We are, Your Honor," Gideon said. "Very well." She looked at Richard's side. "Mr. Sterling, you may begin." Erica's heart hammered against her ribs. She pulled Liam closer. It had begun. "Your Honor, members of the court," Marcus Sterling began, rising with the fluid, practiced confidence of a man who billed $2,000 an hour. "We are here today for a simple, if tragic, matter: to protect the well-being of two innocent children, Liam and Laura Davenport." He paced slowly, his hands clasped behind his back. "To protect them," he continued, "from the instability, the emotional volatility, and the profound, manipulative behavior of their mother, the petitioner, Ms. Erica Hayes." He stopped and pointed directly at Erica. A woman who would sink so low as to drag her 2-year-old children into a contentious divorce hearing, using them as human shields, as tactical props in a desperate final-hour money grab. Gideon jumped to his feet. "Objection, Your Honor. Mr. Sterling is characterizing what I can see with my own 2 eyes," Judge Albright said, her voice sharp. She looked at Erica. "Mr. Cole, I will give you leeway given the unusual circumstances, but your client is doing herself no favors. Sit down." Gideon sat, his face pale. Erica felt the blood drain from her own. Sterling smiled. He had drawn first blood. "Thank you, Your Honor." He spent the next hour clinically and brutally dismantling Erica's life. He presented the deposition from the nanny, who testified Erica slept for 14 hours at a time and often seemed confused. He didn't mention Erica had been suffering from a severe case of the flu that week. He presented a financial affidavit showing Erica had squandered thousands of dollars in the last 6 months. Erica's lavish spending included $800 for a pediatrician's visit. Liam had a severe ear infection, $250 for a second-hand car seat, and $200 for the security deposit on her apartment. "This is a woman," Sterling declared, "who, upon leaving the marital home, immediately engaged in a pattern of reckless spending, all while claiming poverty. It is a performance, Your Honor." Then he turned to Richard. He painted him as a pillar of the community, a grieved father who had tried desperately to get Ms. Hayes a mental help. "Mr. Davenport," Sterling said, "can you describe your attempts to help your wife?" Richard stood. He put on a mask of deep, pained sincerity. I just wanted her to be happy, for the kids. I offered her the best doctors. I offered her a quiet, stress-free life. But she became obsessed with money, with the company. She thinks she's entitled to it. And your feelings on your initial $2 million gift?" "Objection," Gideon shouted. "It was an investment, not a gift." "Sustained," the judge said, looking bored. "Rephrase, Mr. Sterling." "Your Honor, we have here a document signed by Ms. Hayes in 2010, acknowledging the funds as a token of partnership, with no attached equity or repayment terms, a gift in common parlance." He submitted the cocktail napkin. Judge Albright looked at the laminated napkin with disdain. "And now," Sterling said, moving in for the kill, "Ms. Hayes is demanding, what is it, Mr. Cole, 50% of $1 billion enterprise? An enterprise Mr. Davenport built from the ground up with his own blood, sweat, and genius. She is asking for $500 million, Your Honor, as compensation for a marriage she, herself, destroyed with her paranoia and instability. And when she realized she wouldn't get that, she took her children. She is holding them hostage. Mr. Davenport is offering a more than generous $50,000 severance. We ask the court to finalize this offer, grant Mr. Davenport full and sole custody to protect these children, and end this charade." Sterling sat down. The room was silent. Irene Vance, in the front row, was dabbing at a perfectly dry eye with a silk handkerchief. Judge Albright looked at Erica. Her gaze was like ice. "Mr. Cole, your rebuttal. And it had better be good." Gideon stood, his papers shaking. Erica felt Liam's small hand grip her blouse. She was going to lose. She was going to lose her children. She had done everything wrong. Bringing them here was a mistake. She had played right into their hands. "Your Honor," Gideon began, his voice shaky, "my client is not unstable. She is poor. She is not manipulative. She is desperate. The instability Mr. Sterling refers to is the trauma of a woman who was emotionally and financially abandoned by a man of limitless resources. A man who—" Gideon was trying, but his words felt like pebbles against Sterling's fortress. He had no documents. He had no counter-evidence. All he had was the truth. And in this courtroom, the truth wasn't worth a damn. Erica felt a tear, hot and silent, slide down her cheek. She didn't wipe it away. She looked straight at Judge Albright. "See me," she thought. "Don't look at the lawyers. Just look at me." The judge held her gaze for a long, agonizing moment. Then she turned her attention to the massive stack of financial documents. "Mr. Sterling," the judge said, her voice dangerously quiet, "I have read your 200,000 pages of discovery, and I find them unconvincing." A ripple of confusion went through the courtroom. Marcus Sterling's confident smirk faltered. "Your Honor, I'm not sure I understand." "Oh, I think you do," Judge Albright said, leaning forward. "You've presented me with a very expensive, very complicated, and very, very fraudulent picture of Davenport Capital." Richard Davenport sat bolt upright. "Your Honor, I must protest." "You will be silent, Mr. Davenport," the judge snapped, her voice cracking like a whip. "I am not just a family court judge, gentlemen. Before I took this bench, I was an assistant U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York, specializing in white-collar crime. Did you know that, Mr. Sterling?" Sterling's face had gone from tan to ashen. I was not aware, Your Honor." "No, you wouldn't be. You just saw a small state-level family court. You thought you could dump 200,000 pages of nonsense on my desk and I'd be too bored or too stupid to read it. You were wrong." She lifted a single slender file from her desk. It was red, marked with a federal seal. "This," she said, "is not from your discovery. This is a sealed brief delivered to my chambers last night by the Securities and Exchange Commission and the U.S. Attorney's Office, who have been conducting a joint investigation into Davenport Capital for 18 months. Richard made a small, choking sound. "You claim," the judge continued, her eyes scanning the file, "that Davenport Capital is leveraged, with a net worth of near zero. This is partially true. It is worth zero. Not because it is leveraged, Mr. Davenport, but because it is a fiction. It is, in fact, one of the most audacious Ponzi schemes the SEC has seen since Madoff. A collective gasp sucked the air from the room. Erica's hand flew to her mouth. "You haven't had a single positive quarter of actual returns in 6 years," the judge read, her voice cold and methodical. "You've been paying old investors with new investors' money, the yachts, the private jets, the charity galas. It was all smoke. It was all stolen." "Lies!" Richard roared, lunging to his feet. "This is slander. You have no proof." "Sit down, Mr. Davenport, or I will have you held in contempt," Judge Albright commanded. "As for proof, oh, I have plenty. The federal investigation has been quite thorough. They've had a source, a very good one, someone on the inside, feeding them every transaction, every offshore account number, every fraudulent wire transfer for over a year." Richard's eyes darted wildly around the room. He was looking for a traitor. In the front row, Irene Vance had gone completely, perfectly still. Her smug smile was gone, replaced by a mask of rigid terror. "The U.S. Attorney's Office has been tracking your primary offshore holding company, RD Capital Group, registered in the Cayman Islands," the judge continued. "They've been monitoring it for months, waiting for you to move the bulk of your liquid assets. And 2 days ago, you did. You transferred $850 million, believing you were hiding it from this court, from your wife." Judge Albright looked up, her gaze laser-focused on Richard. "The federal government seized that account this morning at 9:01 a.m. Your assets, Mr. Davenport, are frozen, all of them. The Greenwich Mansion, which you foolishly placed in the same corporate trust, is now the property of the U.S. government. As of this moment, you are as poor as your wife." Richard Davenport stumbled, grabbing the table for support. His face was a grotesque shade of grey. No. She. He turned, his eyes wide with a horrifying realization, and stared straight at Irene Vance. "You," he whispered. "It was you." Irene's face was white. "Richard, I don't know what he's talking about." "Oh, but you do, Miss Vance," Judge Albright said, her voice softening into something even more terrifying. "Or perhaps I should use your real name." The entire courtroom turned. Erica, holding her breath, stared at the woman who had ruined her life. "Your legal name," the judge said, "is Irene Volkov." If the room had been silent before, it was now a tomb. "Irene Volkov," the judge repeated, letting the name hang in the air. Daughter of Alexei Volkov, the former Russian oligarch, a man who was, coincidentally, Richard Davenport's very first major investor. The man you, Mr. Davenport, bankrupted in 2008 by leveraging his entire portfolio against fraudulent assets. You ruined him. He took his own life 2 years later. Erica's mind reeled. This wasn't a love affair. It was an assassination. "It seems, Ms. Volkov," the judge continued, "that you've been playing a very long, very dangerous game. You came to Mr. Davenport with a new name, a new identity, and a singular goal: revenge. You became his mistress, gained his absolute trust, and you were the SEC's confidential informant all along. You fed them the information they needed to destroy the man who destroyed your father." Irene Volkov was trembling, her eyes fixed on the judge. She wasn't an arrogant mistress. She was a woman driven by a decade of pure, condensed hatred. Marcus Sterling looked like he was going to be physically ill. "Your Honor, in light of this, all of this, my client, we concede." "Oh, we are far from done, Mr. Sterling," Judge Albright said. "You see, the federal brief notes a complication, a new development." She turned her icy gaze back to Irene. "It seems, Ms. Volkov, that you got greedy. Revenge wasn't enough, was it? You didn't just want to see him ruined, you wanted to profit from it. While you were feeding information to the SEC, you were also using your intimate access to Mr. Davenport's accounts to set up one of your own. Richard, who had been staring blankly, now looked at Irene with a new, dawning horror. A shell corporation in Panama, the judge read. The IV Global Initiative. Adorable. Over the last 6 months, you've been siphoning funds from his fraudulent accounts into yours. You weren't just a whistleblower, Ms. Volkoff. You became a co-conspirator. You were planning to let the FBI arrest him, and then you were going to disappear to a non-extradition country with the $92 million you had personally stolen. Irene let out a sound, a high-pitched, strangled noise. Unfortunately for you, Judge Albright said, the feds are very thorough. When they froze his accounts, they also froze yours. All $92 million. You, Miss Volkoff, are also implicated in the same wire fraud and conspiracy charges. You will not be seeing $1 of that money. You will not be walking away. You just played yourself. That was the moment. The truth, the final, devastating, absolute truth, hit Irene Volkoff. Her plan, her decade of vengeance, the fortune she had stolen, all of it, gone. She wasn't the victor. She was just another one of Richard's victims, and a criminal in her own right. No, she whispered. No, he deserved it. That money was mine. It was my father's. She stood up, her hands clawing at her hair, her face contorted into a mask of pure, primal rage. No, you can't. Mine! She shrieked, a terrible, guttural sound, and her eyes rolled back. Irene Vance Volkoff, the woman in the Chanel suit and the canary diamond, collapsed. She fell forward, striking her head on the gallery rail with a sickening thud before crumpling to the cold marble floor, unconscious. Chaos! Bailiff! Secure her! Judge Albright yelled. Medics to the courtroom! As 2 bailiffs rushed to the collapsed, sobbing Irene. 2 other men, large, serious men in dark suits who had been standing at the back of the room, walked calmly and quickly to the respondents' table. Richard Davenport, one of them said, flashing a badge. You're under arrest for securities fraud, wire fraud, and conspiracy. They pulled his arms behind his back. The click of the handcuffs was the loudest sound Erica had ever heard. Richard didn't fight. He was a broken man. The genius, the predator, the king, all of it evaporated. As they led him past Erica, his eyes met hers. They were hollow. He had lost. She hadn't won. He had lost. Marcus Sterling was already packing his briefcase, trying to distance himself from the toxic blast radius. The courtroom slowly cleared. Medics wheeled Irene out on a stretcher. Richard was gone. The gallery was empty. It was just Erica, her 2 children, a stunned Gideon Cole, and Judge Albright. Liam and Laura, who had been shocked into silence by the screaming, were now both crying softly. Erica just held them, her body shaking from the adrenaline. Mr. Cole, Judge Albright said, her voice suddenly, surprisingly, gentle. Gideon stood up, shaky. Your Honor. The marital assets, as we've established, are non-existent. They are the proceeds of a massive criminal enterprise. Erica's heart sank. After all that, was she still getting nothing? However, the judge continued, I have read the financial history, all of it, back to the beginning, and there is one asset, one piece of clean money in this entire decade-long mess, the $2 million of seed capital from the sale of the Jensen Family Trust that Ms. Hayes gifted to Mr. Davenport in 2010. She looked at Erica. A gift given under what was clearly fraudulent romantic pretenses. A gift that, in fact, was the only legitimate money this entire company was ever built on. The rest was smoke and mirrors. But that first $2 million, that was real. "Your Honor," Gideon said, "that money is long gone." "Not according to the SEC," the judge said, a small, rare smile playing on her lips. "They traced it. The very first thing Mr. Davenport did with that money was buy 500,000 shares of a small, unknown tech startup called Innovest. He bought it as a lark under a separate holding company and then forgot about it. He used it as clean collateral. That company, as of this morning, is one of the largest data processing firms in the world. The court finds," Judge Albright declared, "that those shares, purchased with Ms. Hayes's money, are Ms. Hayes's property. The court orders the immediate transfer of that entire holding to Ms. Erica Hayes." Gideon, confused, looked at the judge. "Your Honor, what is the value of that holding?" Judge Albright took off her glasses. "As of the market's close yesterday, Mr. Cole, it's valued at $87 million. Gideon Cole collapsed into his chair. Erica Hayes just sat there, clutching her children. She had come to court this morning a poor wife, terrified she would lose her children, her electricity shut off. She was leaving as one of the wealthiest women in the state. She looked at Judge Albright, who simply nodded at her. "Ms. Hayes, you have your children. You have your life back. Don't waste it. This court is adjourned." Erica walked out of the courthouse, not through the front doors where the press was now gathering like sharks, but through a private side exit. She held Liam's hand, and Laura was in her arms. The sun was bright. She took a deep, shuddering breath. It was the first clean breath she'd taken in 10 years. She was no longer a poor wife. She was just Erica. And for the first time, she was free. The moment the courtroom door clicked shut, Erica's knees buckled. It wasn't relief. Not yet. It was the sudden, crushing weight of the adrenaline leaving her body, the invisible armor she had worn for 6 months, disintegrating all at once. If she hadn't been clutching Laura to her chest, she would have fallen. I, she stammered, looking at Gideon. Gideon Cole himself was pale, his hands pressed against the wall as if to hold himself up. He looked at her, his eyes wide with disbelief. $87 million, Erica. 87. I think I need to sit down. No, wait, I need to call someone. I need to... Who do I call? A broker? A lawyer? I am a lawyer. Oh, my God. Gideon, Erica said, her voice a reedy whisper. My power is out. I can't go home. I don't have any food for the twins. The mundane, brutal reality of her poverty collided head-on with the abstract, absurd number the judge had just quoted. Gideon stared at her, the fog of shock clearing from his eyes, replaced by a sudden, fierce clarity. Right, okay. First things first. He pulled out his phone, his hands still shaking. You're not going back to that apartment. Ever. Give me 1 minute. He made a call, his voice low and firm, speaking to his very small firm's managing partner. Bill? Yeah, it's Gideon. Listen, you're not going to believe this. No, just... Listen, I need the firm's credit card. The high-limit one. Yes, the one for client emergencies. Well, this is the client emergency to end all client emergencies. Just do it. I'm booking the presidential suite at the Delamar. Yes, in Greenwich. No, it's not a joke. I'll explain later. We just won. No, I mean, we won. He hung up and looked at Erica. A car will be here in 5 minutes, a private one. We're getting you and the twins out of here before the press realizes what just happened and who you are. The ride to Greenwich was a silent, surreal blur. Erica sat in the back of a black Cadillac Escalade, the twins strapped into brand-new, top-of-the-line car seats the driver had produced from the trunk. Liam and Laura, exhausted by the crying and the tension, had fallen asleep, their cherubic faces finally peaceful. Erica just stared out the window, watching the rundown landscape of Bridgeport melt away into the manicured, autumnal beauty of the Gold Coast. Less than 24 hours ago, she was a pariah in this town. Now she was returning, not as a poor wife, but as something else entirely. She didn't know what. The Delamar Hotel was all waterfront views and hushed luxury. The staff, at Gideon's insistence, was discreet. They were ushered through a private entrance to a suite that was larger than her entire apartment building. It had 3 bedrooms, a living room with a fireplace, and a kitchen stocked, per Gideon's frantic call, with milk, fresh fruit, chicken nuggets, and 3 different kinds of macaroni and cheese. While the twins napped in a plush king-sized bed, Erica took her first shower in days, a real one, with water pressure and expensive-smelling soap. She scrubbed her skin until it was raw, trying to wash off the grime of the apartment, the courthouse, the humiliation, the last 10 years. When she emerged in a thick hotel robe, Gideon was on the balcony, on the phone. He was speaking with a man from a top-tier financial management firm. Yes, the assets are clean. Judge Albright's ruling was ironclad. The holding is entirely separate from the Davenport estate. She needs immediate, absolute asset protection and discretion. That is our #1 priority. He hung up and turned to her. They're moving fast. The transfer will be complete by morning. You're safe, Erica. It's over. Erica walked to the floor-to-ceiling window and looked out at the harbor. The shock was finally ebbing, and in its place, a single, sharp emotion rose in her throat. Rage. He was going to leave me with nothing, she whispered, her reflection staring back at her. He was going to let his children starve, just to win, just to annihilate me. Yes, Gideon said, standing beside her. He was. And her, Irene. Erica's hands clenched. All of it. A lie. Oh, a game. She never loved him. He never loved her. They were just 2 monsters, trying to destroy each other. And we were just collateral damage. Not anymore. The news was on the large TV in the suite. The sound was off, but the images were explosive. A split screen showed Richard Davenport, his face grey and slack, being forced into the back of a black federal sedan. Next to it, Irene Volkov, strapped to a gurney, her face contorted in a mask of rage, being loaded into an ambulance, a U.S. Marshal by her side. The Chiron was stark. Golden boy, a gilded cage, hedge fund king arrested in massive Ponzi scheme, wife awarded 87 leutemptos. Wife, Erica said, testing the word. It tasted like ash. I'm not his wife anymore. She turned away from the window, away from the news. She walked into the bedroom where her children were sleeping. She lay down between them, pulling their warm, small bodies close. She inhaled the scent of their hair, a mix of baby shampoo and the day's sweat. They were safe. She had done it. The $87 million was a number. It was security. It was power. But this was the victory. The steady, peaceful breathing of her children in a safe, warm room. Erica Hayes closed her eyes. She did not cry. She just slept. For the first time in a year, she slept a deep, dreamless, and profound sleep, as the empire her husband had built on lies burned to the ground just a few miles away. 2 years later, the name Davenport was synonymous with fraud, a cautionary tale whispered in the hedge fund canyons of Manhattan and the exclusive clubs of Greenwich. Richard Davenport's trial had been swift. Faced with mountains of evidence and the damning testimony of his own mistress, who had turned on him completely in a desperate, failed bid for a lighter sentence, he was convicted on all counts. The judge, citing the unprecedented level of arrogance and cruelty in his financial and personal dealings, had sentenced him to 35 years in a federal medium security prison. He would be 75 years old before he was eligible for parole. Irene Volkov's fate was just as grim. Her gamble had failed spectacularly. While she was given 10 years for her cooperation, she was also the target of a dozen civil lawsuits from the investors she and Richard had defrauded. She would be penniless and deported back to a country that no longer considered her a citizen upon her release. Her revenge had consumed her. But Erica Hayes was gone. She had legally reclaimed her maiden name, Erica Jensen, and she had vanished from the public eye as quickly as she had entered it. She had not returned to Greenwich. She had not bought a penthouse in New York or a villa in Italy. On a bright, cool morning in Burlington, Vermont, Erica walked her 5-year-old twins, Liam and Laura, to their first day of kindergarten. She wore jeans, a worn flannel shirt, and hiking boots. Her hair was shorter now, and her face, free from the stress that had aged her, looked vibrant and young. She held their hands, one on each side, as they chatted excitedly about their new teacher and the class hamster. "Okay, my loves," she said, kneeling to hug them at the school gate. "Be kind, be brave, and listen to your teacher. I'll be right here at 3 o'clock. I'm not going anywhere." She kissed them both and watched them run, 2 bright sparks of joy into the school building. She stayed until they had disappeared inside. Her mansion was a restored farmhouse on 50 acres of wooded land with a view of Lake Champlain. It was comfortable, warm, and filled with books and art, and the messy, beautiful clutter of children's lives. But the house was not her life's work. Erica drove her modest Subaru to a clean, modern glass and wood building downtown. The sign on the front read, "The Jensen Hayes Legal Foundation." She had, in fact, done 2 things with her $87 million. The first was to place the bulk of it in a deeply conservative, ironclad trust for her children. The second was to use the rest to build this. The foundation had a singular, 2-pronged mission: to provide elite, pro bono legal and forensic accounting services to victims of domestic financial abuse, and to fund scholarships for women, particularly single mothers, seeking to enter the legal and financial fields. She walked into her office. It was simple, with a large window and a desk covered in case files. Gideon Cole, looking sharp in a suit that actually fit, poked his head in. "Morning, Erica," he said. He was no longer the rumpled, garlic-scented lawyer from Bridgeport. Erica had made him the Foundation's chief counsel, and he had proven to be a brilliant, tenacious litigator when given the resources. "Morning, Gideon. How's the Miller case?" "We just filed the injunction," he said, a grim smile on his face. Her husband, another master of the universe type, tried the same Cayman Islands shell game Richard did. He didn't realize we'd hired the same forensic accountant the SEC used. We're freezing his assets by noon. She's safe. Her kids are safe. "Good," Erica said, a deep, profound satisfaction settling over her. "What's next?" "The first graduating class from our scholarship program at NYU Law is next month. They're asking you to be the keynote speaker." Erica thought for a moment. She hated public speaking. She hated the spotlight, but she knew what those women needed to hear. "Okay, I'll do it." "You're a long way from that courtroom, Erica," Gideon said quietly. "We both are," she replied, looking at a framed photo on her desk. It wasn't of her children. It was a copy of the laminated cocktail napkin from 2010. The one that read, "To my partner in crime, my future." It was a reminder that what started as a lie, what was intended as an instrument of her destruction, had, in the end, been the key to her liberation. Richard had been right. She was his partner in crime. She just happened to be the one who got away, the one who lived to tell the tale. And now she was making sure she wasn't the last. She turned to her computer, the quiet hum of the office, a peaceful counterpoint to the chaos of her old life. She was not a poor wife. She was not a victim. She was not even an heiress. She was Erica. And she was just getting started. What a story. It's a powerful reminder that the truth, no matter how deeply it's buried, always finds a way to the light. Erica walked into that courtroom with nothing but her children and her dignity, while Richard and Irene sat on a throne of lies. But in the end, the very foundation of their power, their deception and their greed, was what caused their spectacular collapse. Erica's story shows us that true wealth isn't in offshore accounts or diamond rings. It's in resilience, integrity, and the unbreakable love for your family. She didn't just win her case. She reclaimed her entire life, a life that was stolen from her, and one she now gets to build on her own terms. What do you think of Judge Albright's final decision? Was it justice, or was it a miracle? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one. If this story moved you, please show your support by hitting that like button and sharing it with someone who needs to hear a story of justice being served. And of course, if you want to hear more incredible real-life dramas like this one, make sure you click subscribe and turn on all notifications. You won't want to miss what we have coming up next. Thank you for listening.